Welcome to Stacy Washington Now. I am live and direct to you from Nashville. I'm at National Religious Broadcasters Convention, and we have a fantastic show planned for you today. We have RNC National Spokesperson Madison Gisoto Gilbert joining me to talk about the South Carolina Republican primary, and Stacy Skanke. She's a staff attorney at the Goldwater Institute. We're going to discuss Biden finding the country's most successful private Christian institution nearly $40 million. And then we have a really quick news roundup that we're going to do at the end of the show. So you want to stay for that. Let's jump into the presidency. Oh, yeah. So President Biden has the election year to worry about. And one way to motivate voters is to give them something. And if you're the president and you've been smacked down by the Supreme Court on giving out student loan forgivenesses, why not just do it anyway? So there's another election year student loan program. And it feels like bribery because we're talking about giving the people who are most likely to vote for the Democrats a really hefty bonus in their monthly budget, especially looking at the inflation. And we're going to be jumping into the amount of money Americans are spending on food as a proportion of their household budget. Those numbers are way up, and we'll get into that in burning cash. But right now, I want you to kind of understand that we have a price tag of $1.2 billion. And Biden is doing this in an election year because he did it in the midterms during an election year, and it worked. Gen Z turned out big time for the Democrats because they were told, hey, you're getting student loan forgiveness, so why not vote for us? And they turned out. Now, in 2022, ahead of the midterm elections, the announcement was met with a cry of yay. But that was during a time where Americans had student loan forbearance. They could make payments if they wanted to, but they weren't required to. Since then, student loan repayment has restarted. You have people paying their student loans again, and those payments are significant for a number of borrowers. Politico is reporting that this new tranche of forgiveness will be relief for nearly 153,000 borrowers, and those who are going to have their forgiveness on their plate to think about this month are getting emails. And they're being told exactly who is responsible for this new infusion of cash into our economy. Now, remember, all of these things, when government makes money, creates it out of thin air, these repayment loan forgiveness programs, these things are really the driver on inflation. We saw inflation kick up after the pandemic because there were tons of cash payments that were made to Americans. This will have the same impact because who's going to actually repay those loans? They don't just go into thin air. They don't just evaporate. Biden doesn't have a magic wand. They're actually going to go away because other people are going to pay them off. So the administration says they've now approved loan discharges totaling nearly $138 billion for nearly 3.9 million borrowers through dozens of administrative actions since Biden took office. And this is a challenge for the Biden reelection campaign and Democratic allies because they want him to get credit for canceling the debt, even as the White House explores ways to further increase the number of Americans who receive the relief from the loans. So this is a big problem for President Biden. He has to use these kinds of announcements to offset the bad news about his mental acuity and the scandals surrounding his son. Those House investigations are ongoing. So I want you to take a look at this. This is a hardcore Democrat. He's a major kind of spokesperson and analyst for Democrats. His name is Bill Ackerman. He's a billionaire, and he will often go on and provide commentary. His direction on a news show, if he comes out and says Democrats should or Democrats must, you will immediately see the DNC take note of his comments and take action. So here he is. And I think this is so interesting. Bill Ackerman, he's talking about Biden being done and that it's an ego thing for him. Watch this.
And by the way, the other thing to point out here is, and I have been pointing this out as of others, Biden I think is done. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for the country having him as a presidential candidate, let alone the president of the country. It's crazy. And it's just going to get worse and worse. And he should, the worst of his legacy is his ego that prevents him from stepping aside. And that's it. It's his ego. And it is so wrong and so bad and so embarrassing. You talk to people. I was in Europe. I was in London a few days ago, and people are like, Bill, how can this guy be a president? And it's a bit like, again, I go back to my business analogy. Being a CEO is like a full contact sport. Being president of the United States is like some combination of wrestling, marathon running, being a triathlete. I mean, you got to be a serious physical shape and at the top of your game to represent this country. And he is a far cry from that. And it's just getting worse. And it's embarrassing. And he cannot be. And by the way, every day he waits, he's handing the election to Trump, because it's harder and harder for an alternative candidate to surface.
So he's talking about the difficulty that any candidate would face coming into a race at a late point. And so this is up against the truth about him making this student loan announcement. So think about the headwinds that the Biden campaign is facing. I'm not talking about the presidential side, right? Because it's two different entities. Because of the Hatch Act, you have the president running the country as its commander in chief, and then you also have him running his reelection campaign, and those two things have to be separate. That's why you don't see Karine Jean-Pierre commenting on the campaign side. But if you look at what he's actually facing here, he has the domestic issues of higher costs for Americans on everything, spending in the house, spending outside the house, and then the incomes, your wages are not keeping up with inflation. And then you have these announcements from people like Bill Ackman. He's coming in as a CEO, and he's speaking from a position of having done these things himself. And while he hasn't been president, he's run major corporations, and he has a very, very singular opinion here as a Democrat and someone that they trust to come out and advocate for them on issues, that he no longer supports Biden as the nominee. So then that throws it to the speculation that has been wild and rampant around the right side of the political aisle that has to do with whether or not it will be Michelle Obama or if it would be even Gavin Newsom. Bill Ackman doesn't think it will be either of them. He wants to go with the person who is already in the pipeline, which is it's a Democrat, little known guy. He was mentioned later on in the video clip. He's saying the only way to get the delegates in line is to have that guy step up. I don't know. I think they're going to go with the superstar. The Democrats really like celebrity and star power. We'll see what happens. Stay right there for more. Stacey Washington Now.